Hey guys, what's up, and welcome back to yet another episode of the BrkThru Podcast. Now, every week we keep on doing something different. And like I said, this podcast is not for you, only for a producer or a DJ. This is for everyone who's got something or the other to do with music, and not just one particular profession, any profession, anything to do with music. And this podcast will definitely help you solve those issues. And today we have a very, very special guest on the podcast. Today we have with us Hozaifa, who's an Ableton Certified Trainer, an educator in the entire music scene, and he's here to help us. And he's gonna make sure that we have most of our answers and our queries solved. So, Hozaifa, welcome to the episode, man.
Hi, Rohan. Thank you. Thanks for having me over. I've been pretty excited to have this podcast and this chat with you. It's also my first podcast, so I think it's a few things to learn for me as well. But it's always nice to share ideas and ideate with people in the industry. And I actually support and like what you're doing because these conversations reach so many people who otherwise don't have access to this. And I think it's a great thing, man. So kudos for doing this. Thank you.
I was super duper excited to get you on board because you're an Ableton certified trainer. I mean, first of all, most of us are still kind of figuring out some things. What does this do? What does this not do? And for you to go ahead and kind of be a master of that, it's phenomenal, which is very, very interesting.
Thank you.
So Hozaifa, first of all, welcome and tell us about your journey, man. How did music start? How did music happen?
Well, okay, on that front, music for me, I think, was always a part of my life. Not in the sense that, I had music playing at home growing up or that my parents are inclined to music or, they have a background as musicians, none of that. It was just this very personal interest. So I think it starts off from, kind of listening to whatever's on air and that moves into a lot of party going and festival attending in your early days in college. And I think my inspiration really happened on the dance floor. So I think in the early days of partying in my 11th, 12th standard, when I kind of felt this connection that I, wouldn't otherwise feel doing anything else. And I felt like, hey, there's some part of this that I would like to, study, learn, kind of, give back to the scene and be involved. So I think one of the first things I took up was a stint of learning how to DJ way back in my 12th.
Okay.
Which lasted for a short phase, I think a duration of about 4 months, because this was right before my board exams. And you know how things work then. So
yeah, man, of course.
You close down on everything, you shut your windows, tunnel vision, and then you prepare for your board. So then I lost touch. I basically pursued my graduation I did a bachelor's in commerce. I did a diploma in public relations and corporate communication while I was studying. This was in my third year. So I had complete loss of, being in touch with music or, even continuing on whatever I had learned in the short phase of DJing. But I think as I completed my graduation, because, that's the known path that all of us are forced to take. And back in my time, there were no, degree programs with audio engineering, and there were barely any diplomas even heard of. So I kind of waited a year after my graduation to eventually decide what it is that, I want to do. I was an MBA away from being, in quotes, successful. But then I also had the same nudging interest that I had left away for a while, constantly come back at me. And, I kind of had this, I wouldn't like to term it like an inner calling, but probably that's the right word for it, because I would constantly find myself looking up courses, and most of them were abroad at that point. So I would do my research. And then I was like, okay, if I find myself looking at this so often, maybe I should, pursue this, take up maybe a postgraduate diploma in audio engineering, or maybe give it a year and kind of see how things go from there. So I did that a year after my graduation, did a diploma in audio engineering this time.
All right.
And never looked back. This was in 2011. I passed off from the institute I was studying at. And back then, we did not even have Ableton. We were not being taught.
Okay.
So for me, it's really exciting because it's come a full circle where I think I was lobbying with my batchmates to get the institute to actually teach us Ableton as well. At that point, we were only being taught Logic and Pro Tools. But the institute was kind enough to try and make some arrangements, which happened after we passed out. We were still called back if we wanted to, come and attend some classes. But you know how it is. Once you pass out, there's no going back. But
Of course.
eventually we kind of learned it on our own, and that's where it snowballed to, and it is where it is today.
Hmm. So, Huzaifa, you started. I've heard you've been like you started DJing at gyms and all of
That's
those
right.
things. Is that true?
Yes. Yes.
So was DJing just like a hobby, or did you see yourself as a DJ or a producer? You also went ahead to learn music, and I mean, was it to learn music production or just to be an audio engineer? Because convincing your parents after a basic graduation or a basic commerce degree,
Right.
I'm pretty sure there must have been some some restrictions from home. What do you want to do? Because you can't obviously sell them that I want to be a musician. So tell us about that journey. How did you convince your family, and what happened exactly?
Okay, with the family side of things were surprisingly easy. I
Okay.
just had to tell them I want to do a diploma in audio engineering, and they're like, okay, sure. I mean, it was really unconventional because there are questions about, what comes after this and
Hmm.
how does this rope in all the things you've done before. But there was none of that. So my dad actually, through the time that I was DJing and listening to music and blasting sound away at home as often as I could, he was really supportive about the fact that, okay, I enjoy music and I like listening to it. So there were no holdups from the family side on, trying to pursue this as a course, which actually left a lot of responsibility on my own shoulders.
Hmm.
Because at some point I'm like, why isn't my family even asking me what are you going to do after? And I'm like, God, I have to think about this myself now. And it led to frustrations, off and on being like, okay, damn, like, am I asking myself the right questions, or is my family supposed to be asking this to me, So it kind of came together in a way that I had to be responsible for the choice I made and just do justice to it and the best I could. I was blessed with amazing teachers who were really inspiring, and audio is a world in itself that I totally got absorbed into. So I think they just left me to pursue my interest in any way that I saw comfortable. And that required a lot of, missing on Friday nights and Saturday clubbing and, what have you to actually learn audio. I did start DJing at a gym, that's true. Only because I had a
Hmm.
circle of friends who, were DJs. Rohit Jacob, aka Slicks from Pune,
Okay.
Cube, these guys were already making music, DJing commercially. So through the friend circle, I got introduced to DJ Clint, who was running, the whole DJing setup at various gyms here in Pune. And he offered to
Okay.
teach me. So I wasn't too sure about how or what I wanted to do at that point. But I knew that, I would like to kind of start playing music and, see how it goes. And the gym is actually, or was, an amazing place to start playing because my way of judging if people are liking what I'm doing was, to observe the person waiting for a machine and seeing if they're kind of foot tapping to it, or, are they like, if you're into the music, you'll find them grooving. And that was my way to tell. And on the other hand, nobody really cares about what you're playing in the gym. So
Of
you
course.
had the freedom to kind of experiment, but also, the chance to learn a lot and practice a lot. That was almost 4 to 6 hours or more sometimes per day.
Hmm.
So it was really good. It started from there. And then I took up the audio engineering, which obviously would lead me on to learning music production. I never realized there would be so much of the engineering or the technicalities that we'd also learn about recording, working with the workstation, learning what
Hmm.
MIDI audio is, how to process sound. All of that was a completely new world for me. So when I went to take up the diploma course, I was a blank slate waiting to be filled in. And I think that was really, really fun and rewarding at the same time, because I didn't have an end goal saying that, okay, I was inclined towards making music, but I didn't have that intention of saying, that's the only module that I'll pay attention to. So,
Okay.
it covered a vast array of things. Like we had sound design assignments, we had post-production assignments, on location recordings, music production, of course. So I did everything with, the interest of like learning audio. It gradually moved from being music production oriented to actually audio production focused, which would include,
Hmm.
like recordings like this podcast and
Of course. Of course.
voiceovers and instruments, and then of course your own music. So I think it's an ever expanding world, and as a student I was very willing to take in everything that I could learn and try and work with. And I think over the years, I'm like, I think about 7 years in practice as a teacher, 9 years ahead of the course. It's now that I kind of recognize myself into doing something specifically, and some things that I still will kind of build on.
All right. So tell me one thing. When you were 17, 18 years old, when you considered doing this course and considered doing something in audio, what was your first eventual plan? I'm pretty sure, like for us, when I thought first time, okay, let me learn music production, is because I saw myself being a producer, being a DJ, and being like a well-traveled artist.
Mhm.
for you, I'm pretty sure you must have had something in your head because recording and post production and film scoring, all of those things. I
Yeah,
mean, for me personally, was I didn't even know that these things actually
same.
exist.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so what your intention was to be a music producer, or was it just to learn, audio engineering?
No, it was definitely to be a music producer. I'll tell you because I had, like I mentioned, the common friend circle with artists, producers, and DJs from Pune. So I had friends, come over. I mean, I'd meet them and they'd make me hear something that Cube has made, and I'd be like, "Wow, this is amazing." And I thought that the audio engineering course would be my entry point into learning how to make music. So it was definitely for the purpose of producing music.
So I think you mentioned Cube. So for all the listeners out there, so Cube, Rohan, Jacob, Slicks, all of these guys are my classmates. We're all from the same school. And since you mentioned Cube, the first time I actually saw someone DJing and considered, taking this seriously is I think Cube was playing at this place called WTF. I don't know if he remembers this.
Mhm.
And me and my friend Chris were like, okay, let's do this thing seriously, but we don't know how. And we obviously didn't have a console at home. And
Right,
we spoke to him, say, what do we do? And and he's like, what, this is an audio, this is a sound card. I think it was a Native Instruments Audio 2 or something like that. He's like, buy this,
right,
and then you'll be able to mix it and you can practice. And that's the first okay aha moment. Okay, we have to buy this.
right.
So but and now we've been like close, and we've been chilling at a lot of festivals. But Cube's a great fellow, man. So
Totally.
I think you guys were all from the same frame, same scene. And I think even he was at the, I think he was playing at the gym at the same time, I think,
No,
right?
he wasn't. I think he was playing more commercially because he had learned from a different academy and he had learned DJing on turntables. So he was already playing commercially. If anything, Slicks, Anachak
Yeah,
were
yeah,
all
Felix, yeah.
inspiration, that led me on to kind of taking, a leap into learning more about these things. But Cube later, after me joining the audio engineering course, also joined it to kind of refine his own art.
Mhm.
So then kind of we grew closer because then we had common things to talk about, and you know how audio discussions can go on for like ever. And
Of course,
now
of
when we
course.
see ourselves getting into an argument, it's like, dude, I'll call you later. There's work to be done.
So tell me, Josefa, so after I'm pretty sure you learned the art of music production, and you learned, how to eventually make a track.
Right.
When was it that you said to yourself, or you thought to yourself that let me take another route, because
Mhm.
it seems very glamorous that I'm a music producer,
Yes.
and I do this for a living, and some people eventually don't make it big with a track, or they don't make it big with a record label,
Right.
and they go to another route, probably produce for other people. Some people try getting into the movie film scoring
Right.
scenario. You chose a very alternative route to be an educator, to teach. So how did that come across? Was it something that you thought that this is going to help me, or was it a very strategic decision that I think I'm better at teaching, or than being a producer myself?
I love that you asked this because, sometimes when you're totally like absorbed into doing whatever it is that you're doing, and,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that I ever decided to be an educator. In fact, when I was offered the position of a teacher, my first reaction was that I shouldn't do this. Being a backbencher all my life and having trouble all my teachers a lot, if karma was to come bite me, I've had it. But it wasn't a conscious decision. Like I said,
Mhm.
all the responsibility of how I take things forward after the audio engineering course was on my own shoulders. And I knew that music production is
Okay.
something that would take me time to practice and have music out there. But I also knew that I wanted to keep engaged and working. So what I did was the day I finished audio engineering, the very next day I had a job at a live sound rental company in Pune. So I
Okay.
thought the best way to give back from everything that I've learned, both technically and to deal with sound production, would be to get involved in working for sound at festivals and at parties and at venues. So I worked in live sound for a year right off the audio engineering course, post which I stopped working full time with the vendor but continued mixing live. And while I was doing that, I
Mhm.
would take on all sorts of projects. Like I said, I was new to the game, production and also recording, just audio production in terms of post, location, everything was a new world that we were introduced to, sound design, synthesis included. So
Of
I knew I
course.
had to give myself a few years before, I can be specific about what I want to do. So I was working in live sound. I continued to do that. Meanwhile, I would kind of try and get any opportunity of working or learning with the people I respect and the people who've taught me. So I got an opportunity to work on location for a diploma film of, I believe, an FTII student. And this was was through a faculty that had taught me earlier in college. And post the location stint, I was assisting him in the studio at the college, late evenings on Sundays, sometimes in the day when the studio was free, to kind of go and complete the film that, he was in charge of post, but I was his kind of eyes and ears in case he missed anything, and his assistant, so I could kind of, sit back and learn a few things. So that was interesting. And truth be told, pardon me, I used to sneak into college because to get to the recording studio, you had to go past the head of department's office. And at this point, I was freelancing, which is doing a couple of things. And it's another way of saying I'm figuring things out, So I never wanted to really bump into my head of department and be like, okay, I'm freelancing. But one fine day, when we were leaving the studio on a very busy afternoon, he found me in the lab. And I was like, oh, okay, this is it for me. But he was excited. He was very happy to hear the things that I've been up to and the things that I've been doing after, passing out from college. So he had seen me as a student. I was also an intern while I was studying there. So he knew me a little bit. And then having learned that, I'm still really involved in doing the things that I am, he actually offered me a position of a studio intern, saying that, would you like to, kind of be here, help the studio be up and running. This is CMEDU, by the way, in Pune, which is an established, college for audio engineering degree and diploma courses, where I also taught full-time for 6 years. So this is how I got offered the job. And I had to think about it. I said no, like I mentioned earlier. But my friends and I think my family were like, you should give it a try because, teaching is learning. And I totally felt like I told you, ek saal mein kuch nahi hota hai, to be honest. In 1 year, nothing happens. It is barely, for me at least, I felt it was only taking the horse to the water. Now, how much to drink, when to drink, how to drink it is something that you need to spend time over, finding your own artistic self. Because honestly, there's many opportunities. Honestly, we've begun to see audio engineering as a means to an end, saying music production. So
of course,
I went with that mindset, but slowly that started getting blurred as soon as, I heard so many interesting things about audio, various facets of production, processing, and of course, working with the DAW as well. So I felt like I needed at least a couple of years. And that's when I would tell all my friends that these guys studying maybe 3-year degree courses are so lucky because you do require that amount of time to really absorb the things, cross-reference it, try it, and then finally it becomes your own tool to work with. So I think in that journey, the teaching profession found me and I got offered the job. I took it up as a trainee intern. Very quickly after me joining this institute, their head trainer for Pro Tools quit because he wanted to move to Bombay and continue doing things independently. So I was asked if I'd like to teach Pro Tools and I'm like, yay, of course. So I got teaching Pro Tools and I got certified as a Pro Tools trainer much before Ableton happened. While I was at the institute, I would spend a lot of my free time in learning Ableton in and out. And having done that, I spoke to, again, the head of department and I'm like, why don't we introduce Ableton? We were already doing it with Nakul Ambilkar Sequel, who would be kind enough to take time off his schedule and we'd kind of make sure that he can come and teach batches. So, that's the point when I spoke to the head of department saying like, can we make this like part of the curriculum and not like a workshop? And we'd still get Nakul to do master classes. So we continued with that and included Ableton. And a few years later, we hosted a couple of Ableton events at the school. The certification process came up in 2016. I applied for it and there were 3 rounds. Don't even get me started. It was probably
because we had a very interesting question when I said that we have you on board.
Right.
The first question that came to me was, can you just ask him how do you get certified?
Man, I should probably record that already. And next time somebody asks me that, I should just hit play.
This is your time to tell everyone.
I think so. Perfect opportunity. So
yes.
Okay. So unlike the education and the certification modules that we are very used to based on schooling and college systems.
Yeah.
The Ableton Certified Trainer or the ACT certification works very differently.
All right.
When they announce a certification event in your region, if you're already a teacher or an artist working with Ableton, helping the community with, maybe learning or some feedback, you can apply for it. Post an application, which itself is pretty intensive because you need to send a couple of requirements, of course, your curriculum vitae. Probably, they would like to see you teach. They would like to know what's your motivation of doing this. So at a very initial stage, it's like, okay, I am interested. And if they reciprocate to that interest, this, then you're invited to a Skype interview, which is both personal and technical. And then you have the third round, which is a certification event. And this whole process takes about 3 months. It took 3 months from the time it was announced to the time it concluded, at least back in 2016. And I have to say, it was the most exhaustive thing that I have ever done. So I've done the Pro Tools certification also, which is basically you apply for it, you pay a fee, you attend trainings as to how to train or how to teach Pro Tools, and eventually you have to give an exam, obviously kind of demonstrate teaching, and you're certified. But here it works very differently, where you're not really taught anything, but you're assessed for what you know and how you already teach and do a set of things. So it's more like Ableton assessing you and validating that, okay, your skills are good enough to be a teacher. So it's very kind of self-driven in that way. You are obviously pointed to certain tasks that you have to complete for not just Ableton Live, but also be hands-on with the Push, know Max for Live, have your audio engineering know-how and your teaching skills, all of it combined, will be kind of tested. So it was intensive. And I think when it got over, post the 3 months, I think I had a sigh that lasted for a year or two after that. I'm not even joking. Anybody who knows me knows that I was completely burnt out, exhausted from it. But it's been equally rewarding. I loved the process. I think it was challenging. And that got me to also refine a few things I do. And that's been about 4 years now that I'm teaching as an Ableton Certified Trainer.
So how does it change you as a trainer? What does it bring? Of course, I'm pretty sure it brings value.
Yeah.
But what has changed, after getting that tag or getting that certification?
I think being asked how you get certified is something you get asked a lot. No, I'm kidding. Of course not. Having the stamp or having the recognition is extremely prestigious. We have only, I think, about a little less than 300 certified trainers worldwide. So, of course, you're very sought after for your expertise in the area of teaching the software, teaching production. However, in terms of your teaching style, they in fact respect and, kind of want to bring out the individualistic approach, which comes with different trainers. Okay. So the best part is there is no one curriculum. There's no one way to learn Ableton. Like for everything else, you have like the company sends you, okay, a list of topics you do in the first class, in the second class, so on and so forth. You have a set amount of time that you kind of need and you can work around that. But with Ableton, it's all up to you. If you're an artist, you teach from that perspective. If you have a certain kind of approach to teaching audio production, so it allows you to preserve who you are, what you do as an artist / educator, but just also helps you validate your knowledge. And that's something that I feel was good to know, that your knowledge is being tested. It's good to know maybe from feedback during the certification event a few things that you can improve on, and that's about it. And they're one of the most supportive companies, because we as certified trainers can write to them for maybe the tools we need, some help, question and answers. If you're doing an event, they would support with letting the world know, and so on and so forth. So yep.
All right. So since Ableton is something that I'm pretty sure you use the most, tell me why should one use Ableton? What are the 5 reasons why you should start using Ableton for your production?
Okay. I think first thing would be flexibility. B, you can take your studio production to stage. I think another point would be that it allows you to truly work as a one-man band, wherein you can find ideas while you're already jamming with your previous ideas. It's almost working like in conjunction with band members. I've always said this, and I'll say it again. If you spend enough time on Ableton, it will make music for you, because it's really inspiring. It really helps retain the flow, whether or not, you're a accomplished musician per se who's used to writing music over a timeline, or if you're somebody who's experimenting with ideas and you want to kind of try and see which of these come together into your final track. So the 2 windows in live, I think, is something that sets it really apart from any DAW. And if you want to take that a step forward, because the screen is not really a place to kind of look at, and the keyboard and mouse are not really musical tools, but if you really want to take it a step forward, get hands-on, then you also have a physical controller called the Push, which is literally in a physical extension of Ableton. So it's like Ableton on your fingertips, where you can write music, mix, kind of compose parts, arrange stuff, edit, process, add effects. So then it's almost like you're playing with an instrument. And I think it's really cool to have that, because today we are using piano-like interfaces to write sounds or write parts for sounds which aren't piano-like. So, instead having a pad-based system makes it really easy, even if you're not already a well-learned musician, to get ideas flowing, because a 64 pad matrix is way easier to navigate than a piano-like interface.
Of course.
Yep.
What do you think what do you think are the most common mistakes that any new producer does, especially once they're using Ableton or any other software?
Common producer mistakes, what I hear from reviewing a lot of mixes, would be too much low end.
And how does one solve it? And how does one, since we can't actually have a personalized lesson for everyone, how do you solve the basic low end issues?
Okay, so focus on getting good focused low end from just the kick and the bass, which are low end oriented instruments, and try to high pass or low cut filter other elements in your song. So that brings in a set amount of clarity in the low end, which then comes only from your kick and bass, and that takes care of half the problems.
All right. So since we can already see that you're very, 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 very technical, and it's obvious if you've already tuned into this podcast, you know you're going to be going to be up for a nice technical one. And I've asked Hozaifa to take it a bit low, because most of my listeners might be wondering what's going on. But what I've heard is, Hozaifa, is that you also had an alternative nickname. People should call you CC. What does that mean?
CC. Oh,
yes.
Again, that's attributed to the arguments that Anoshak, aka Cube, and I would have endlessly, and I'd hold fort, so would he, and that's where the name came about, Critical Cousin, because he'd play with sounds just like an artist would, and I would analyze them just as critically as the engineer would. And half the time he'd have his hand on his head and be like, "God help you, man," and "God help me," because we're in this together. That's where the name Critical Cousin came from. I think now, reflecting upon it, I kind of like it. But initially it was like, okay, God, this guy is overly critical. And one should be, because music production, as artistic as it is, today with, let's say, software and the entire production studio on your fingertips within a laptop, you need to know not just operating the software, but you need to also know your way around recording stuff, processing stuff, mixing it. There's a lot of technicalities, and I don't really take to the fact that people kind of think of it as, oh, technicalities, and I shouldn't, I don't need that. I am an artist. Well, man, the technique is what helps you make better art. If you wanted to paint, you can pick a paintbrush and kind of go your own way, fine. But if you know how to stroke it, you're going to just get more curvatures, more out of it. So with limited tools, and especially today in a world where there's more plugins, more tools than there are fish in the ocean, knowing what you're to do with it through the technique of how it's been applied. No one here is reinventing the wheel, but if you just realize where the technique lies and how much you need to kind of learn for the sake of serving your art, I think that helps each one. So that's a little about the name and on my perspective on the balance of musicality and technicality.
Of course. Actually, I was talking to Sequel one of the weeks before. In fact, the last episode was with him, with Sequel, with Nakul. And he, all of us, and including me, everyone who's at that nascent stage of 16, 17, who's just heard EDM, wants to be a producer, we've all actually called Fruity Loops and Ableton and whatever we could, get probably a cracked version of, we got it. And we've all, kind of tried to get our head around that entire particular software.
Correct.
And us gave up trying. Some of us succeeded. Some of us actually learned the entire software, but actually haven't made something really good.
Right.
And us actually have a good career in this industry. And Nakul's obviously one of the guys who's done great. But what Nakul said is it's very important for you to spend a lot of time on any particular software.
Yes.
But he mentioned that he would suggest getting an education done from someone who knows his shit.
Yep.
So what is your say? I mean, I'm pretty sure that many of us learn it ourselves, but do you feel it's really important that for me to be a music producer, I need to go to a course or a class or get a degree? Or is it an alternative way I can just figure out myself, because like YouTube is there and all of these things are there? What would your suggestion be actually?
I think formally learning it will streamline a lot of information that's out there. You can learn it on your own. It's absolutely doable. But then you're going to put in a lot of years and time in learning stuff rather than creating. So if you're willing to do that and take the really slow path out of, kind of making a mistake and then if somebody's kind enough, or if you're lucky enough for somebody to point the mistake out to you, only then can you improve. So I always tell people, if somebody tells you they have 10 years of experience, try to assess whether it's 1 year repeated 10 times or whether it's actually experience that has led to them their growth. That's very
Makes
important.
sense.
It's very lucid, but it's very important. So I actually currently am teaching a producer who's got his track on, number 8 on Beatport in the deep house charts, and he still wants to learn the nitty gritties of mixing because he's self-taught in FL, produced a lot of deep house music. The art is something that we hear, we're inspired, and it comes kind of with a little bit of practice. But then to really know it enough to have the software and all the other things that might come in your way, for them to be out of the way or actually be serving your music, is something that you kind of can say that if you learn it well, that will really, really help you.
Mm-hmm. So, Huzaifa, if I have to learn, so do I need some technical knowledge? So, can I just send my younger brother to you and you can make him a producer, or do I need to have some background in music? What would it take for me to learn Ableton as a person who has no interest? Can anyone be a music producer?
Both equally kind of can benefit from learning. Generally, when we say prior experience, it's little to do with the DAW and to do with audio engineering aspects as such. It's to do with playing an instrument and knowing music theory. If you were lucky, your parents dragged you to a piano or a guitar class, or you yourself were inclined in learning, an instrument, and now you want to learn music production using music technology. For somebody who's never played an instrument before or never made music before, for them it's again learning music technology to try and recreate, sounds or music that they're inspired by. So you generally see the output kind of in terms of learning be very similar, but the outcome be very different. Because a musician will always apply more music theory but work with more conventional sounds. Whereas a non-musician would apply less music theory, limited to their knowledge. Of course, there are tools and stuff that really help you have an equal footing, but nonetheless, that's exactly why you see electronic music having such a vast sonic soundscape, but a very limited musical, musical movement in the sense that it's more repetitive, but it's a greater display of sound design and, having fun with inorganic sound sources, which is again born from either the computer or the hardware that you choose to work. So I personally like having students with, a heightened interest rather than knowing something from before. And even if they know it, it's always good because then we can touch upon what they already know and kind of refine that. Whereas for the musicians that I've taught, they're now trying to kind of do everything themselves, because earlier, if you're a musician, you could go to a studio and there'd be a producer, a recording engineer, a mix engineer, and a mastering engineer as well. And all of these would be highly specialized at their craft. But today, as a one-man producer, you have to realize the weight you're carrying on your shoulder. And if you can kind of understand that, you know when to wear what hat. And again, that goes to serve and make better art.
All right. And does age, matter? At what age do you learn? Because this is something I've noticed. So most of the guys in Netherlands and Holland, most of these guys, they start learning music production at what, 13, 14, probably even earlier. Most of these big guys have started at least figuring it. And I see in our country, we probably pick it up a bit later, mostly after our 10th standard, 11th standard. I'm pretty sure it's changing now. But what's the youngest person you've taught? Who's the youngest guy who's come towards you and learned it?
Interesting. I think the youngest person I taught was my niece, Sarah.
Okay.
She's a Hindustani classical vocalist, and she's been studying that for 10 years now. So she was really inclined to begin to record and produce herself based on her favorite artists. And she wanted to know how to make those sounds, arrange the stuff, kind of get that kind of voice going. So she's the youngest student I taught, and it was really a lot of fun. And we kind of, I think, inspired each other with the things that she learned, and the outcome in terms of sound that came back to me again inspires me to kind of step it up for her, and that's how it went on. So yeah, I think it was my own niece, and it came in the family, luckily.
And does age matter? Because looking at it, we actually have a lot of free time with us right now. I have a couple of cousins who are just probably spending their time on a PlayStation. I think it's a very good time and a very good idea because to learn something, even if the basics if they can learn, I don't think there should be any issue. It will definitely help them.
Absolutely. No, age is no factor. In fact, see, music is something that you never stop enjoying or listening to. So why should it be a barrier if you want to start making some music? One should not feel that, I am already, say, in my early or late 30s and it's probably too late. No, you're not going to clear your 12th standard.
Actually, Hozaifa, thinking about it, I mean, I know many friends who are DJs for the longest years. I think it's a great
Yeah.
time for them as well to upgrade their skills. To go from DJ to producer. Do you think there's going to be a lack, because we have many friends who've been into DJing for a long time, and it's
Right.
absolutely it's very very. I mean, I firmly believe that the best producer is not the best DJ, and the best DJ is not the best producer. But do you get those cases, or do you think it's easier for them to, who someone who's been in the scene for about 10 years? Is it
Mm-hmm.
a easier process for him to become a producer because he's been DJing? And I mean, that's the knowledge that he has, music, in sense of bars and of mixing. That's the knowledge he has. Do you think it makes sense for them to move towards production? And if they do come from being DJs to become producers now, say about 10, 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
easy or how difficult does it get?
Right. I think you're going from playing records to
Mm-hmm.
making records. And from all the listening and playing that you've been doing over the years, you've obviously built a repertoire of sounds that you like and are
Of course.
inclined to. So I think for DJs who turn producers, they kind of, try to make the sounds that they love playing and then embed that into their sets and, evolve themselves from DJs to artists. And today it has come to be where DJs slash artists are the ones who are getting more and more opportunities to play at
Of
festivals because they release an EP or an album and there's so many people who listen to it and now they're like, I definitely want to hear him or her play when they, are performing in their city, and this brings in a lot more opportunity. Plus, the artist would definitely know a lot more about the nitty-gritties of music production, putting things together, rather where a DJ has kind of tastefully picked a set of tracks that are then, blended in. Of course, that is a different skill set as well. But I think it's a natural way to kind of evolve as a DJ to learn production in today's time. And in fact, it's nice that you asked because I have actually spoken to and should be mentoring very established DJs in the city who are now like, we want to learn music
course.
production. And there are good examples of DJs turned producers whose craft is completely changed once they've learned production. For example, I mean, I'm not sure, I think everybody would know these names, Nakul
Mm-hmm.
Ambilkar, you have Gaurav
Of course, of
Malakar
course.
Blot. These are people whose sound I was listening to when I was doing my audio engineering course. I met Blot and I keep telling him, man, Snafu was out there when I was studying audio engineering. So hats off to you. It was so inspiring. And he, humble as he is, he's always like, okay, all right, whatever. It wasn't that great. But, but it was, in fact, a really awesome release. And yeah, so DJ turned producers, also changed their style and sound. Like what I believe is that Bollywood remixers then evolved into
Of
making
course,
deep
yeah.
house and, playing more deep house. And now they're known world over for deep house and not what they were doing earlier. So it is kind of saying, it's interrelated, but it can also be separate if one wants to look at it that way.
All right.
If that makes sense.
Of course, it does.
Like DJing can just be DJing, production could be production. But I think if you do want to kind of keep yourself also very, very engaged, production is a nice thing to look into.
Yes. Huzaifa, you also mentioned that you have a mentorship program. Tell us about that. I mean, what do you do? Is it for someone who's already learned the art and you're just kind of guiding us? Is that another separate service that you're providing as well? What is mentorship? I mean,
Yes.
what is that course, or what is that entire what is the concept of mentorship? And you said you do a one-to-one mentorship, right?
Right. So, having basically, taught full time at an audio engineering course, I realized that there are students who join this specifically to learn music production. They don't realize that they will have recording assignments, post production assignments, and a lot of, add ons, which is great for somebody who wants to learn all facets of audio production. But I realized that the music inclined guys just need to learn a certain set of things from, knowing about the basics of sound, the physics, the studio equipment that they work with, EQ and compression, using audio effects and the digital audio workstation. And then you have MIDI sampling and synthesis, which are like the foundational topics to learn for a music producer. So I think the one-to-one mentorship program was born out of recognizing what it is that producers are really inclined towards, even if they take up an audio engineering course. Also recognizing what it is that one should focus on learning and understanding, and how much in depth should one learn about these topics to be an independent producer. From all of that, and also the requirement of certain students who didn't want to join a full-time course, who maybe weren't comfortable learning in the classroom, required individual attention. So from requests of oh, do you teach privately and are you able to do it? So we, the academy, that's again when I was teaching full-time, had had a talk about this, and they were kind enough to actually allow me to, on the side, cater to students who want to learn from me privately. So that's why the one-to-one mentorship program was born.
Okay.
And I don't just teach Ableton in that. In fact, Ableton is what we use to lay down everything that we learn and also apply it. It starts from, taking you through the basics of sound, physics of sound, studio equipment, signal processing, digital audio, comparing analog to digital, learning how to listen and what to listen for, learning to work with your equipment, learning the nitty-gritties of various, techniques like EQ and compression, using saturators, what's the difference between analog and digital, what equipment do you need and how much of it, so on and so forth. And of course, Ableton is at the heart of it. We also learn MIDI sampling, synthesis. Those are, I believe, foundational topics for one to work with the DAW. So I think the one-to-one mentorship program has been ongoing and in process since the time I taught my first student, who was also a friend, who was like, listen, I'm not coming to join the college. I'm not sitting with kids. I'm too old for this. Can you teach me privately? And also I work from home most of the time. So there's no chance on earth you're coming to my place. Can I come over to yours? And I'm like, sure, man, you can come. So from there, it kind of started along with teaching full time early in the morning. And now that I'm doing things independently, besides having established a tie up with Audionub Academy to teach there for their weekend courses, I still go as a visiting faculty to CMedu. I'm in process of tying up with DJP Media in Bangalore to conduct their online courses. And besides doing all of these things, there's still people who want to learn from me. And I think I enjoy that a lot. Coming from, a big classroom format, I think I love working with an individual's personality because, no two people or no two students' learning curve is the same. And I think in a classroom, we're kind of teaching everybody at once. It's different from teaching you, based on how well you absorb something. Maybe you're good with a certain aspect and certain things require more attention or, a little more focus for you. So the one-to-one process is really rewarding for me to see students who come as blank slates and then skyrocket into being producers. So a good example would be Harshvardhan Quistek is somebody who took a one-to-one course with me, a short course because he was already DJing, producing music. So he wanted to learn some specifics, which I love that, if you're already producing and you recognize what you need to learn, we could do that. And then a friend of his who was maybe just attending, Harsh play music in his sets and then being like, hey, dude, where do I learn from? So Harsh recommended me, and then I taught this guy, and today he's gone to Musicians Institute LA to do his master's in music production. His mom and his dad still call me, his mom a lot, to just express how grateful she is because she saw this boy's interest and, a life turnaround is, in her words, is what she says that, I haven't seen my son so interested and applying himself into something so much. He's like, when I open the door, all I hear is loud music and he's dancing away. But this time he's not listening to stuff, he's actually doing stuff. And I enjoy seeing my son so engaged. So I really want to put him into higher education for this. And we're very persistent. He does his master's. So we worked around that and we, made sure that he could meet the requirement to get into MI, and he's still kind of learning and, refining his technique. And I'm sure he's going to come out a successful producer on the other side.
Of course.
So that's the long version of the answer to, I think, almost all your questions, because none of it can be, close-ended. I would like for people to understand that how personal this can be, how many variants there could be to it. And that's, I think, with all streams of art, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. So, Hozaifa, I think we pretty much covered what all can happen. Now, a real honest question. You got to be really honest. Can anyone listen to this podcast?
Okay. Haven't I been?
This is extremely brutally leaving aside everything. Extremely honest. Can anyone listen to this podcast just come up to you and say, you know what, I want to be a music producer. I have 1 year. Can I be a music producer? Is that possible?
I would say it's possible from the side that I see it. Yes. But are you willing to put in the work?
Makes sense.
Are you willing to put in those hours? Are you willing to miss the Friday nights with your friends until you come out the other side doing what you need to? The thing with music is that it's so glamorous. It's so much fun that people take it as casually.
Of course, that's the problem.
My question would be, are you willing to put in the work? Let's give it, I would say, 3 months to your first track. And the best part is that my one-to-one mentorship program offers to have your first track mastered for free, or it's included within the course, I would say. Because I would love to see your progress through and leave you with the confidence that you can do this. So absolutely anyone can do it. Within a 6 months time, it's possible to definitely have your first release. It's very possible. possible. Tools have made that possible. Technologies made it possible. All you need to do is understand what you do, and that takes care of so much. It takes care of so many questions you may have creating, so many opinions that you might have come across about the things that are possible or not possible. And opinions are generally biased because it's individual, but then objectively, is it doable? Absolutely.
That's great. You also mentioned mastering. You helped to get the first track mastered. I think recently you also started your
Right.
own separate, you could say, firm where you mastering music for artists.
Yes.
Wavescraft Mastering. Tell us about that.
Yes.
And I mean, what is mastering? If you could just dumb it down for all of us. What is mastering, and do you really need it?
Okay, definitely. So I think first and foremost, I would like to thank all the students that I've taught over these years, because mastering is something that was born out of a student coming to me. And I still remember that evening when I was in college, surfing away, learning some stuff or reading an article with headphones on, listening to music. And if someone taps your shoulder at that point, it better be worth it. So I remember the student coming to me. His name was Rohit, if I'm not mistaken. And he's like, "So I have finished producing a track. I need it mastered. Can you do it for me?" And I'm like, "But I don't master music. I have no idea what this is." He's like, "No, but I mean, can you make it better? And can you just listen to the mix and see what you can do?" And I did just that. I heard the mix. I immediately recognized a few things that I could improve on it. And we went to town and he liked the results. So I said, "Hey, this is good. I like doing this." Because besides teaching, it's very important for me to keep my ears going. And mastering is something that is highly specialized. It's the last step in the production process. It's more like a friend to the music, helping you find and resolve problems objectively that you weren't able to perceive or you overlooked, and kind of enhance or build upon those, and just kind of make your track ready for streaming and playback on various systems, on various formats. Also, as artists, as technical as it is, it's a very artistic thing, because today more than ever, we as mastering engineers are being called upon for working on bedroom productions, and those require major amounts of shifts in terms of the balance of the sound, and how it eventually translates onto every laptop, phone, speaker system that it's played on. So I would think it's somebody helping you identify problems objectively. So it was born really early when I was still teaching full time, and I think I continued doing it for many years. I think about 5 years now, but it was only a Sunday stint for me. So I'd wake up Sunday with a fresh set of ears and I'd have a track to master. Fortunately, I've been lucky because early support came from friends like Anosha Cube, who's been producing music. Rohan would also send me tracks with his then outfit called Uzundat. And so I had a lot of support from friends who were already producing music, and through their feedback, it's something that's evolved into an established service. So having done about 50 tracks, I said I want to do this a little bit more than I already am. So that's when I established Wavescraft Mastering, and I just wrapped up an EP earlier today, which is a melodic house EP for a producer based abroad. And I now offer my mastering services to certified trainers worldwide, to producers worldwide. There's releases on labels, both domestic and international. So it's come a long way. And now that I'm doing things independently, I do have more time to review mixes, help students get better at their end of the craft, and then finally mastering it for release.
Wow. So what's the process? Because I believe every producer who's working on a track knows exactly what sound he's looking for. And I
Right.
think they approach you where they're stuck. So is there any involvement? Suppose if I give you a track that I feel is good, but can be great, it can be wow, but I don't know how to get
Yeah.
there. What's the process? What happens? I give you the track and do we connect again? Or is it something you just wrap it up and give it to me and it's my track? How does it work? What's the process?
So to a large extent, it's a process, like you said. There has been a certain way of audio production, which would be that you'd have the musicians play their instruments, the recording engineer record, the mix engineer mix it, and finally a fresh set of ears who can hear this now and be like, okay, these are some problems I identify. The bass needs to be managed better. It of course needs to be louder. There's got to be more depth. There's a little bit of clutter in this frequency, this band of frequencies that I can clear up a little more for better translation. So I think in terms of saying, if you could just send me a track, I mean, that's where it starts. That's where my job begins, to assess what you have sent me. But I would listen for a finished mix, a good balance of all the elements, well processed sounds, well EQ'd elements, good amount of separation, depth, and clarity. And if there's something that I hear is lacking, I would definitely write back to you. So I'm known for writing long emails, okay? Just so that I can point out everything that the producer can do better at at their end. And they generally learn so much from that feedback process. Once that's done and they reach a point where they've done the best they could, that's where I take it up to, make it even better and send it back to them. And that's when they hear it. I've also, in fact, very consciously mastered music for producers who are just starting up, only for them to hear what the end result would sound like post mastering, so that, they can better hear their mixes now in comparison with commercial releases. What producers do is they make a mistake of very early comparing their productions to release stuff. It's very different because that's mastered. It's gone through the whole cycle. So I tell them, rather than referencing a finished track, why don't you learn your system better, learn your own, shortcomings a little bit better, of course, through comparison, but also there is a way to make that comparison and figure out where you stand as a mix engineer. And there's new tools coming out every day that helps people evolve their style. But I think it's not about the tools, it's about what you do with
works. Thanks a lot, man, Hozaif. We've almost come to the end of the podcast. This has been one of the most, I've got to learn a lot from this episode. And I'm going to put back something back
Thank
again
you, man.
to work.
I'm so happy.
And there's a lot of things that I'm pretty sure we can learn from you again. So I really would like you to come back again to the podcast once things get better.
Super.
We definitely catch up. We'll sit down, meet each other, and do a one-to-one proper podcast. And I'm pretty sure most of my listeners will get to learn a lot from you.
Sure.
And I just wanted to, introduce you to the rest of the world, at least my audience, with regards to what you're doing. And we're obviously going to get more technical. We can't make it too technical, for the sake of all our listeners. But he's going to be, and Hozaif is going to be, very, very close to the podcast. So if you guys have any questions, any doubts, any queries, any issues, I'm going to leave down a couple of his links. You obviously guys have my links. We can always help each other. And at the end of the day, let's just make sure that the music wins, man. And I think we're all, just a DM away, and we're here to help. Before we let you go, any last words, any tips that you'd like to give to our aspiring producers? Anything that you could just kind of help them right away, which will make their track slightly better?
Well, like I said, use low-cut filters, clear out the low-end clutter from elements that aren't really contributing to it, and stop inserting reverbs. Stop throwing a reverb on every track. That's what destroys your production. I've heard one too many awesome tracks that have completely come out sounded muffled with too many rooms and spaces by adding a reverb on every single track. Set up auxes, return tracks, throw in a reverb there, share the same sense of space with at least a set of instruments, and that helps it sound very coherent. I think these are good starting points. Besides, I would love to say, educate yourselves, ask questions, get your questions answered, maybe by talking to fellow producers, your friends, get involved, talk to each other, help each other, be each other's ears and, guiding perspective. Maybe somebody's better with something that you're not, and you could, kind of talk and it benefits everybody. So ask your questions, have them clear, don't live with doubts. And if you need your mixes reviewed, I'm always happy to do that. So you can find the link on the podcast, send me a track sometime. But one thing I request is please be patient. I only have one set of yours, so I do like to give your music as much attention as I do to anything else that I'm doing. And sometimes it requires time. And if you can just be patient, I think that is music to my ears.
Wow. So guys, that was Hozaif. And like I said, lots to learn from here. But I totally agree with what he's saying. Just make sure that you're sharing your music. Yeah, I get a lot of friends who keep on sending me their music and get some reviews from people. And it doesn't matter if someone's a big artist or small artist. Get as many reviews as you guys can. And I'm pretty sure you're going to get at it. And wherever you're stuck, reach out to Hozaif, reach out to me, and we're definitely here to help. Thank you so much, Hozaif, man. This was so much fun. I look forward to catching up with you again. And like I said, I'm going to self-invite myself to your studio and get all my questions and all my queries answered.
You're most welcome, man. Anytime. Lockdown or not, you're most welcome.
Looking forward to catch up, man.
Cheers,
this was awesome.
man.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Now, exclusively for BrkThru Podcast listeners, Hozaifa is offering a 10% discount on his online courses. Also, to all my brothers and sisters out there, we are also offering an exclusive 20% discount on all mastering services. Remember, this is an exclusive offer for just the BrkThru Podcast listeners. So if you want to avail any of these offers, you have to DM me on my Instagram. My Instagram handle is BRK_THRU. I repeat, it's BRK_THRU. Send me a DM, we'll hook you up. Now, the offer is for a limited time only, so just make sure you get back soon. Cheers.